we have to decide, do we want a ferry system? Do we want a ferry system? Because the path that we're going on now says we don't. There's just one thing after another that says that Washington is not ready to build the new boats and is looking for any alternative that they can find to keep from building new boats, when in my opinion, that's really the only thing that's going to rescue Washington State Ferries. In 10 years' time, shall we say, Washington State Ferries will be crippled by a lack of vessels. The long-range plan calls for 11 new vessels to be built by 2032 when we only have 3 built. I see no other conclusion other than that reducing or eliminating some service altogether is going to be in our future. I see the Bremerton run being permanently reduced to 1 boat. I see the Vashon run being permanently reduced to 2 boats. I see the Sydney run never returning.
Ken Burtness, my guest today, was with Washington State Ferries his entire career. In fact, started at age 16 part-time, worked his way up the ladder to become captain, where he spent most of his career sailing in the San Juans. It's in your blood, right, Ken? Your grandfather was a captain with WSF.
My grandfather was one of the original captains with Washington State Ferries, and actually 2 great uncles also. And so, yeah, Washington State Ferries has been a part of my life from the day I was born. I've been a resident of Lopez for 48 years now, so I experienced Washington State Ferries, what's going on there every day. And plus I have been on the San Juan County Ferry Advisory Committee for probably 10 years now. So I have been, closely involved with everything involving the county and the ferries for quite some time.
Today we're going to be talking about retirement age of more and more Washington State Ferry vessels. But before we get into that, let's talk about something that WSF is getting very right. You give WSF a grade of an A for this. What is that?
The hiring, recruiting new employees, and in particular their deck officer training program. So we all know that the current situation with Washington State Ferries started with the passage of Initiative 695 in 1999, and for 20 years there was a lack of funding and a continual deterioration. Since then, there's been broad acknowledgement of the problem and really great efforts on the part of everyone to bring Washington State Ferries back. And Washington State Ferries, their management and employees have done a great job. The current head of Washington State Ferries, Captain Steve Nevy, I believe is the best person in that position that we've ever seen. I've seen the head of Washington State Ferries come and go since 1970, and I really believe they have a great person there.
And the bottom line is that fewer and fewer sailings are canceled due to staffing problems.
Yes, that is getting better. It still happens, but it's much better, much better than it was.
The subject that we're going to talk about today really isn't directly WSF's fault. This is a political problem in Olympia. It has to do with funding. When we talk about the fleet, what WSF does the best it can with what it has, correct? So we're talking politics today.
In large part, yes. And in all fairness, I have to say that the current governors, the current legislature, current Washington State Ferries management was dealt a losing hand. If you go back to 2020, the hand that everybody was dealt was a losing hand, and nobody's got any aces up their sleeve. So we have to go from there.
What's your concern about the Issaquah class boats?
They were built from, I believe, 1979 to 1982. So there were 6 boats built uh, in a very short period of time. My personal experience from working with Washington State Ferries, I recall other things about the Issaquah class that perhaps might not be widely known. I looked at the Wikipedia page on the Issaquah class, and from that page, it says, as it built the Issaquah class, Marine Power and Equipment was accused of substituting cheap materials and cheap labor, and groups said that it was enabled by poor oversight by the Washington State Department of Transportation. My personal experience with the Issaquah class, the first time I walked on board was that everything looked cheap. There was so many things that really weren't up to marine standards, what you'd expect on all of the other ferries that I'd seen. In particular, I remember, say, the windows in the wheelhouse. They looked like something you would buy in a big box, hardware store. It's not looking good for the Issaquah class to provide much service through the 2030s. That 50-year age, all of these boats will reach that 50-year age by 2032. So to rely on those 6 boats much past that is a very dangerous thing to try to do. What it means is that any one of them could go out of service essentially at a moment's notice. Washington State Ferries has a history where that has happened. If we go back to there was 4 boats in the steel electric class. If we go back, I can't remember which year, but there was 3 of them were taken out of service just at the drop of a hat. The governor decided that we were not going to put any more money into them, and they were just taken out of service. And so what that resulted in was the immediate suspension of the Port Townsend run, because those were the only boats that could service that run. So the immediate suspension of the Port Townsend run for, I believe it was a couple of years. The next boat to be retired, I believe, was the Hayak. We saw the Hayak that was retired for a lack of maintenance, and the Iowa was rather suddenly taken out of service because of steel degradation. That same danger lies with all 6 of those Issaquah class boats. And as they were all built within 3 years of each other, the potential for 6 boats that close in age with a documented lack of maintenance, there's a great potential for some serious service disruption going forward. And of note also is that there's 5 other older vessels, all of which will be at or beyond their 60-year retirement age in 2032 also. So in 2032, we will have 11 vessels that will all be in the state of, in a position where they could be suddenly pulled from service. And to think that all 11 of those vessels will last given the current build schedule that we have, all we have for certain is a new boat in 2030, 31, and 32. Given that build schedule, it is almost certain that we will see the number of boats that Washington State Ferries has below level that they'll be able to maintain current levels of service.
Can you kind of compare for us what life might be like in 2032 for ferry-dependent customers compared to the depths of the problems in 2024? How would you compare? What, is it going to be as bad? Is it going to be worse?
You're absolutely right. We can't know what the future lies. We have a pretty good idea of what the new build situation is going to look like, how quickly Washington State Ferries will be procuring new vessels. We have for certain, a boat in 2030, 31, 32, so that's 3 plus. But then the future after that does not look very good, and particularly in light of the current decision by the legislature not to fund the 3 new boats that Governor Ferguson has proposed. Currently, we have 21 boats, and quoting from Senate Transportation Committee presentation, current levels of service are at high risk for disruption. That's where we're at now. Current levels of service are at high risk for disruption. If you look at the 2040 long-range plan, it says the consequences of not implementing the plan would likely result in degradation of ferry service, with Washington State Ferries postponing much-needed capital improvements and making difficult choices to reduce or eliminate some service altogether. Every year that goes by, all these boats get older. Every year that goes by, the potential for disruption increases. It is important to keep in mind that the industry standard for retiring vessels is 30 years or less. So to extend their fleet life, the Washington State Ferries has, instituted a retirement age of 60 years. So when we see all these boats at their retirement age, they're already twice the age of what an industry standard would be, which again says that it is extremely unlikely that we will be able to keep all these boats going long enough to keep Washington State Ferries from permanent service cutbacks. I take this as another method of putting off building boats.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land.
Let me briefly talk about British Columbia ferries, because they have the same problem as Washington State Ferries, is an aging fleet. This is what British Columbia Ferries has done. Since 2016, they've built 10 new vessels. They have 4 more vessels that are to be delivered by 2026 this year. They have 4 more that will be delivered by 2031. What BC Ferries has done is they will be building 18 new ferries in 15 years. This is kind of what we need to do. The road that we are on right now is, permanent service disruptions.
I think you say that we've crossed the Rubicon. The decisions that have been made in the recent years and recent months and recent weeks ensure that some of this pain is unavoidable.
For 25 years now, Washington they've done everything they can to not build new ferries. With this recent decision to not institute Governor Ferguson's proposal to fund another 3 vessels, it is ensured, it is guaranteed that by 2040, we will have fewer vessels then than we have now.
So you call for 2 new boats a year for the next 8 years, is that right?
If we want to have a healthy Washington State Ferries, that's the only thing. Can it happen? Current reality says no, but that is what it's going to take.